be prepping 2 breakfast meal preps. And I don't do meal prep too often, but I do like to do breakfast occasionally. And the 2 recipes that I'm going to be making today are quiche and a breakfast casserole. I love making these because they're not only super yummy, but it's also a way for us to get rid of our abundance of eggs that we have from our chickens. It is almost March and our chickens are back to laying a super large amount. They slowed down a little bit over those super short days in December and January, but now they're back up. And we have so many eggs that I'm just trying to use up. We do give them away or sell them to people when we can, but I also like to use them for us too. So that is a good way to get rid of eggs if you have a lot of chickens like we do. So first, to start with the quiche, we're gonna make a pie crust. I feel like a lot of people are maybe intimidated to make pie crust from scratch, but as long as you have a blender or a food processor, it makes the process super simple. I will leave the recipes for everything I'm making today in the description below, just so you guys, if you want to make them, you can make them. Just go ahead and shape it into a flat circle. This is very soft. I feel like I added a little bit too much water to that. And I'm going to wrap this in some plastic wrap. And this will go in the fridge for honestly a couple of hours. I like to make sure that it stays nice and cold before baking. There's this pie crust recipe that I found that is made with lard, and I really want to try that. I have only ever made it with butter, but I think lard would be good. Another good thing with pie crust is it's a good thing you can almost like prep ahead of time. You can make a double batch, triple batch, and then keep it in the fridge or freezer and just grab it whenever you need a pie crust. I use pie crust mostly for the quiche and also for chicken pot pie. And there's another like beef pot pie that I make with pie crust also. So it's just a good like kind of staple to have on hand if you like to cook from scratch and eat stuff with pie crust. I don't know. I just pulled a loaf of sourdough bread out of the oven. I feel like every video I'm making a loaf of sourdough bread, but I wanted to talk about fresh milled flour because that seems to be all the rage nowadays. And I really want to start milling my own flour and get a grain mill and buy the wheat berries and just use fresh milled whole wheat flour because the health benefits are really substantial, and I think it's like cheaper over time because you're buying the wheat berries in bulk, and so I don't know, there's just a lot of benefits to it. So I really want to get a grain mill. Hopefully here in the future I can make that happen. This part definitely requires some elbow grease. One thing I really need to work on is making my pie crust look prettier because I'm not very good at that. While the pie is in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and get the filling for the quiche started. So I don't follow a recipe when I'm making quiche. I just kind of add in whatever I have or whatever I'm feeling like. Lately, I've been focusing on eating really high protein, so I am going to use some store-bought egg whites. because I don't want to use our eggs from our chickens and throw away the yolk. So I'm going to just add in some egg whites for some extra protein. So I'm gonna do about 5 eggs and add in some egg whites, probably about 3 servings, and then cottage cheese, shredded cheddar, and some seasonings. And then also I'm going to add in some pickled peppers from our garden that I canned last summer, and oh, some bacon. I always have to have some kind of meat in there too. I do not measure anything, as you can see, but I'm going to try my best to leave the recipe in the description. It used to take me twice as long to cut up bacon with a knife until I just kind of gave up and used scissors instead. I think it's 10 times easier, and you just wash the scissors like you would a knife. You can really do any kind of meat in a quiche: sausage, bacon, ham, just anything that you want or whatever your preference is. I love that sound. I almost forgot an essential ingredient, which is milk. Add some salt, a lot of salt. I heavily salt everything. And pepper. And I think that's the only 2 seasonings I'm going to do. All the other, I mean, I like to keep quiche pretty just mild in its flavor, and let the eggs and the pie crust and the bacon and the peppers and all those other things kind of give it its flavor rather than from dry seasonings. This is how our pie crust turned out. I definitely want to invest in those pie weights to make my pie crust a little bit prettier, because as you can see, it has fallen down quite a bit on the sides, but it's okay because it still tastes really good. I'm probably going to add pie weights to my Amazon cart right now. And this is going to go into the oven at 400 for around 25 to 30 minutes, or just whenever the middle has set up and it's no longer liquid. My oven tends to run cold or something, I don't know, but it tends to not cook things very good. So I always have to do like 10 minutes more than what the recipe calls for. So just adjust accordingly to your oven, I guess. My next recipe is going to be a breakfast casserole, but we are out of eggs, so I'm going to go collect some from our chicken coop. So let's go do that. If you have chickens, you know that in the wintertime when there's freezing temperatures out, you have to collect the eggs pretty fast or else they will freeze. And we still eat them after they've been frozen, but they're just not the same after that. And with those eggs, I definitely like to scramble them because they're just not the same. It's hard to describe them, but you have to get them before they freeze. But I just want to also say I'm so grateful to have chickens right now during this egg shortage with like the bird flu and stuff happening, because our price of feed has not gone up. It stayed the same, and our chickens are still laying, so we don't even have to worry about eggs not being there or being super expensive. It is now now many days later and I am coming back to finish the breakfast casserole. I wanted to finish when I was doing the quiche, but busy mom life, I guess, so we're back to finish today. Growing up, my dad used to make breakfast casserole for us all the time, so I feel like I got my recipe from my dad, and just the general gist of it is bread or hash browns as the base. Today I'm going to be using bread and then some kind of meat. I prefer sausage because it's a little bit more bulkier than bacon would be, but just do any kind of meat that you like. And then I like to add veggies to mine as well, and I'm doing onions and peppers. That's normally what I do, but I guess you could use whatever you have on hand. But onions and peppers definitely taste the best in it, in my opinion. So I'm just getting these cut up, and then we'll get started on the rest. Would not recommend putting these in raw. So after I get these cut up, I'm going to saute them so they are cooked before we put them into the casserole. Bread from a half-eaten sourdough loaf. You could really just use any bread that you have on hand or anything that you'd like. Honestly, stale bread works for this too, so if it's about to go bad, you could use that in this too. So get a 9x13 pan and spray it down with some oil. And then you're going to add in your chopped up bread pieces or hash browns. I just happen to use bread this time. And just layer this into the bottom. These are cut up into small tiny cubes, so little bite-sized pieces. And then take your meat, taking my sausage, sprinkling that over, and our sauteed peppers and onions. And next we're going to make the egg mixture. I'm going to take about 8 eggs and then some egg whites just to bulk it up. I'm going to do milk and cheese, and then salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and paprika. Dump your egg mixture very slowly over your pan. And I like to just press it down and make sure that everything soaks into the bread. I'm gonna cover this with some foil and put it into the fridge for about 30 minutes. If you want a hot breakfast but you don't have time to make it in the morning, like Sunday before church, you could prep this the day before and keep it in the fridge, and then when you're ready to bake, just pop it in the oven and it'll be ready to go. But I'm just going to put it in there for 30 minutes right now, let that bread soak in all the eggs and the milk and let it get soft, and then I'll bake it.